From a cautionary tale perspective, I think it's important to understand what the consequences of greatness are and to see if we can avoid some of the pitfalls that maybe Kobe fell into. So Kobe's greatness was something that I believe made him very misunderstood. People thought that he was so arrogant. People thought that, things wouldn't work out for him because he could cut people off or do some of these things. But a lot of those are a function of the hard work he put in behind the scenes and his unwillingness to compromise on anything other than greatness. I think that's what turns a lot of people off about him, because they don't understand that to be the very best, you have to do things that are not going to make you a likable person. You have to sacrifice tons of things. People might think you're arrogant, but you're just focused. There's that line between him and everyone else. Like, people always ask, what was he like in high school? Was he an asshole? Was he this? No, he just knew what he wanted to do at an early age. So he's not going to go hang out with as many people. He's not going to go do what a lot of kids would consider fun, because for him, it wasn't fun. He wasn't antisocial. He was just driven towards a specific goal. Kobe had a lot to learn about interacting with other people. He really hadn't been a student of human nature as much as he had been a student of basketball. So, he didn't always do the right thing as far as his teammates. He had that young and stubborn swagger about him. He was going to do what he thought was best, what he thought he should do regardless of anyone else. So he was so focused on basketball, where many other kids might be focusing on just trying to make friends and develop those social interpersonal skills. That wasn't of interest to him because he didn't believe at the time it would make him good at basketball. So it wasn't necessarily that he was mean or not a good person. It was that he was just indexing differently than other people. Kobe was also just fundamentally different from other people, and that could cause friction between teammates or anyone else. This cat talks 7 languages. He didn't live through the same shit we did. He knows what to order when we go to a Chinese restaurant. Like, he really knows. Just a high level of intelligence that he had because of this world that they didn't necessarily have because of where they came from. They weren't dogging him or anything. It's just like, this cat is different. So Kobe is just so fundamentally different than, for example, the players he played with in the NBA, that he was difficult to understand. He had this complexity. He had this air of worldliness that other people did not have exposure to. And it's really easy to distrust or dislike or distance yourself from people that you don't believe you have anything in common with. One story that I really liked that sort of showed me the difference between Kobe and other NBA players was that when Tex Winter and Phil Jackson took over and they're learning the triangle offense, Kobe is baffled that other people aren't familiar with it and can't pick it up easily, because that is what he lived through his childhood, through watching Jordan play and all of these things. Kobe had a great line, Schaefer said. He's like, did any of you guys get TNT? Because, the Bulls were on TV so much. It's like he knew already. He had completely mastered it. Before the first practice, he knew. He certainly knew the right spots on the floor. He knew the right actions. He knew what he wanted to get out of it. It was amazing. So Kobe is studying the triangle offense way before Tex Winter gets there. He's studying these things, and he's assuming that everyone else is studying these things too. They want to be great basketball players. They are great basketball players, but they're not studying this. That does not match up to him. It baffles him that other people are not viewing it in the same way. And I think that that's something that causes a lot of dissonance for him over time. Kobe just resented the hell out of that because he looked at Shaq and he went, this guy doesn't work as hard as I do. He's not in shape. He's a goofball. He's a clown. And I'm working my ass off. And I'm supposed to take the backseat to him. It's one of those things where I think at a more mature age, maybe he would have been able to deal with it in a different fashion, but maybe not. I think we all have a sense of justice. We all feel that we want to be rewarded. And when we see that somebody who doesn't work as hard is given higher status, I think it rubs us all the wrong way. It's just a matter of how we deal with it. So this is the origin or the seed that plants this disconnect with Shaq over time, is that Kobe is constantly putting in the work. Kobe is treating this mission or this quest as the main thing in his life that brings him value. And Shaq doesn't view it the same way. And so it's hard for Kobe going the other direction to empathize and relate to other people that fundamentally see things a different way. He also distanced himself from his family and friends. So he believed that he had to have this singular focus, and he was willing to compartmentalize and cut off people from his life in order to do that. On the other hand, that can make him very lonely. I don't know if he would explicitly say that. He did have a good family life. That was one area where he really did carve out time to be able to make time for his kids and for his wife. But there was a downside in terms of social connections, friends, and family. Bryant clearly wanted the space to find his own independent adult life, but he admitted that his dedication to the game required so much, it was difficult to pursue relationships with either friends or lovers. So again, he eventually does find Vanessa, his future wife, and they were married for quite a long period of time. But friends and these other things, he didn't socialize with other players. He didn't have those types of connections. And that is something that I believe he sacrificed for a lot of the success that he had. So, although Kobe's family was relatively well off, they still had to make sacrifices. His mom sacrificed to create structure in Kobe's life, to dote on him in a sense. His dad suffered in the sense that, they were running out of basketball money. He had to take on these different jobs. He coached at LaSalle, he coached at these other places, largely to give Kobe the best opportunity to succeed in basketball. And, his wife obviously suffered being in the public eye during a lot of the scandal and these types of things. So there's massive downside for the people around him. And the publicity is something that Kobe, I think, compared to other people, did a relatively good job of managing and adjusting, but it still probably could have been improved on. One thing that probably eats Kobe up the most is that his approach probably left some championships on the table. So if he got along better with Shaq, if he was able to adjust and work better with teammates, and his ego wasn't as much in play, he might have been able to win 1 or 2 more rings even. And both him and Shaq admit to this. ESPN broadcaster Stephen A. Smith would later tell a story that Shaquille O'Neal was at a Lakers game when Bryant summoned him to the locker room during the game to confess that it wasn't until he played with other centers that he came to realize he had failed to recognize O'Neal's greatness, that he regretted his failure and had cost them the opportunity to win more championships. Shaq came to a game. So, yes, that's from the Kobe side, but on the Shaq side, Shaq, when they had a sit down, they kind of agreed to the same thing. They both agreed that they probably could have had at least one more in them. Winter developed tremendous affinity for Bryant and admired so much about his unflinching dedication, but he also came to believe that Bryant's lack of college experience was ultimately the thing that kept him from the goal of being an unquestioned greatest of all time. So it's interesting to think about that as well, as he did forego college. Would that have translated into, if he had gone to college, would he have learned skills that made him even more effective in the NBA? There's no way of saying that, but there is an opportunity cost of anything we do. And it's interesting to think about what the upside and downside are. I think he made the right decision going straight into the NBA, because any years he played in college would probably be years that he would take out of his NBA career and the experience there. But on the other hand, he sat most of his first season. And if he went and he played at Duke, for example, for the full season and got the reps in, maybe that would have added something, or he would have come into the NBA the next year and been able to start right away. So there is a back and forth, and there is a trade-off there. Something that George Mumford said is that you have to be somewhat narcissistic to be as good as those guys are. So, ego is something that maybe prevented him from getting the last 1 or 2 rings, but that same ego is probably what got him the 5 rings. So it's really difficult to say if this was truly a negative consequence, but I'm certain there are things that he could have done that would have gotten him additional rings. The question is, would those extra rings have come at the cost of the previous rings and what got him to there to begin with?